So, what did you miss at Jubilee this week? Well, you missed the story of the Exodus. You missed our young people, youth and children, sharing with us the story of the Israelites complaining in bondage in Egypt, being freed from oppression and bondage, and then complaining in the desert. You missed that wonderful moment as Wonder Bread flew through the air and was caught by those who were hungry. It was a wonderful presentation, and it brought the story to life. Later in the service, we would wonder about manna and would wonder about quails at night and wonder about 40 years in the wilderness and how sometimes one needs to open one's eyes in a desert to recognize that the desert is not dead, but in fact full of life. One needs to change to a new way of living when one moves from the city to the desert, from oppression to freedom, from a life without faith to a life with faith. And sometimes what we need to do is open our eyes and our hearts to recognize the miracles that are all around us. But the essence of it is we need to learn how to change. And the truth is we don't always like to change. Perhaps the people of Israel spent 40 years in the wilderness because they really weren't prepared yet to change. They knew how to be who they had been, and they weren't ready yet to become who they were meant to be. And maybe some of us can do it in 4 days or 4 years, and maybe some of us require 40 years. The assurance is that God is with us as we try to let go of the past, as we try to embrace the future. And sometimes we actually might even choose to stay in the desert of our own free will. And that might disappoint God, I don't know. But I do know that God stays with us in the wilderness, and God is with us in the promised land, whether based in reality or whether found in a metaphor. God invites us to find new ways and to recognize God's presence and the miracles all around us. But sometimes we have to stop living in the desert as if it were a work camp in Egypt. Sometimes we have to recognize the beauty and God's presence in the desert. That's some of what we discussed. If you weren't with us today, you also missed a modern anthem by the choir that left even Etienne speechless. We barely knew what to say. It was the 23rd Psalm, but it was so beautifully done that we couldn't really continue without pause, without a moment. So that's part of what you missed. You missed the story being told by enthusiastic young people. You missed an anthem that took your breath away. You missed the story of the Exodus and the invitation into change, but also the promise that God is with us as we choose to change. Oh, and you missed a great welcome back lunch. Jason and the crew put together a wonderful salad lunch, and everyone was fed, and everyone went home, I think, feeling included, feeling invited into change, positive change. So that's what you missed. I hope you won't miss us next week. Next week we are going to celebrate our anniversary as an affirming congregation. We're going to celebrate our desire and our efforts to be welcoming and inclusive to all people, but especially the LGBTQ community. And that service is going to be special because Etienne is going to preach, because Greg Daly and Etienne together will have created the liturgy, and we will share communion, not just with each other, but with people all around the world. So you may have missed us this week. I hope you don't miss us next week. God bless.